Excellent. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the IFDC COVID-19 Uganda Agribusiness webinar. My name is Andy Thigpen. I'm the head of communications for IFDC based in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. I'm really excited about this webinar today. It is the first webinar that IFDC has done externally in a long time. And we're going to jump right into it. We've got about 104 attendees out of some 420 that are registered, but we're going to go ahead and get started for the sake of time. We've got a great lineup of panelists today that are going to talk about agribusiness issues and really focus on the solutions to some of the agribusiness issues they've faced in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. So to get things started, I'd like to introduce Anno Galema, who is going to speak on behalf of the Embassy of the Netherlands in Uganda. So thanks for being here, Anno.
Thanks, Andy, for this. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. I would like to thank everybody to not only to participate in this webinar, but also those who participate in the survey, which was done by IFDC as a kind of starting point for this webinar. A lot of thanks to IFDC for taking the lead in this survey. Clearly, the survey was a kind of quick and maybe a little bit dirty quick scan of what was happening as an impact of the COVID-19 and how companies were dealing with that. I think that was the quick. It was also the strength in the sense that we got very quickly some basic information to make informed decisions about how we can respond, not only the projects or our embassy, but anybody who's more or less in the same kind of situation, how they can respond on how companies are affected by the COVID-19. At the same time, we also noted that most of the activities that we do at the moment are relevant for food security, but are definitely still relevant also in the context of COVID-19, if not even more relevant, particularly when we look at resilience of programs. That's one of the clear lessons we've learned from the COVID-19 impact. Today, we dive a bit deeper. I'm very interested to get more testimonies now of companies, how they deal with it, how it has affected them, what they did as a response to it, how they might look to the short and the medium-term future, taking the COVID-19 into account. And I'm glad that we are able to share these testimonies of these companies, but also the outcomes of the survey with a wider audience, not only those who are directly involved in the Netherlands Embassy program, but also everybody who's involved in the sense that we're all in the same boat. We might have different captains on our boat, and we might respond differently, but we're all in the same boat and trying to see how we could cope with this new situation for us all. So thank you, and I hope we have an interesting discussion on this. Back to you, Andy.
All right, great. Thank you, Anno. Okay, so we're going to hear from Anno again at the end of the webinar when he will come back to kind of wrap up and give us some closing ideas. We're going to kick things off with David Slane, who is the COP of the REACH-Uganda project. He's going to give a brief overview of these survey results and talk a bit about the challenges that were the ideas and the challenges that were collected through these survey results. And then we're going to hear from our panelists one by one, and that's going to be the really special part of this webinar. At the end, we'll have a short moment for Q&A, and if we don't get to your questions, we'll be able to take them and answer them through a follow-up email later on. So at this point, I'd like to ask David Slane to join us and to give us a brief presentation on these survey results.
Okay, Andy. Thank you.
Let's see. Okay.
Andy, do you have my screen?
Sure do. And yeah, okay, and we can hear you. So please go ahead.
Yep. Okay, great. Great. I'd like to start by echoing some of Anu's words and thanking the companies that took the time to respond to this survey, but also to the partners of the Dutch Embassy from SNV and from VAGI, who also supported us in this work. But let me run through this presentation very quickly to give everybody some idea of what we learned from the survey. So let's change. Okay, so we had 89 responses to the survey. As you can see, the companies that responded are actually providing a pretty good geographical spread across Uganda. We actually managed to get pretty much national coverage from this. There does seem to be a little bias in one direction. That's because we do have, the embassy does have a lot of partners in the dairy sector in Western Uganda, but also we, as the REACH project, have a lot of partners in Southwestern Uganda as well, and that was all captured under Western. So there was quite a high level of response, and that meant that we had quite a broad coverage. So we had a series of questions in the questionnaire, and this was done online. And so there are a number of areas where we can see there has been some quite strong responses from partners. So you can see that when the survey was conducted in early May, a very high percentage obviously reported that they were selling fewer products. They were having challenges interacting with their clients. They're also having difficulty sourcing raw materials and inputs, and we'll come back to that later on, as well as having difficulties distributing their products, and we'll come to that again a little bit later on as well. Also, just the general business environment. The respondents noted that they were having difficulty in meeting with other business people, with other stakeholders, people that they would normally be working with. Unsurprisingly, there was a large number of respondents also said we're having difficulties financially. We're having challenges in managing our credit, in making loan repayments. Respondents, almost 50%, also said we've had to let go of some of our employees, and obviously that's a very significant impact beyond the immediate business interest, because those are people who have been affected, who have lost incomes. There are also a number of companies that said, look, we've tried to keep our staff on board, but what we've agreed internally is we'll all take a reduced salary, which is a high degree of flexibility for a period of time. So one of the things, as I said, we would come to a bit more was our business is able to fulfill orders, and you can see that 82% of businesses said we are having problems fulfilling orders, and when we probed a little bit further, we can see between almost 84% and there's been a significant drop off in their ability to fulfill orders. More than almost 55% have said we haven't been able to reach, we've missed more than 30% of our orders. Another 30% said we've missed at least 30% of our orders. So it's had a very significant impact on the businesses.
Oh, sorry, there's someone. One moment, David. Sorry. Okay, please go ahead. There was a bit of feedback there.
Supply chains,
David?
and that cuts two ways, because it means that they have problem. We wanted to probe a bit further about whether businesses' supply chains had been affected, because that cuts two ways. It means that businesses can fulfill orders, but it also means that money isn't going back into the economy on the other side to their suppliers. Now, the vast majority of these businesses are agribusinesses, so they are buying raw materials, whether it's potatoes, rice, maize, from farmers. So that means that money isn't flowing in the economy as we would expect. And again, we can see that there's been quite a big drop off in their supply chain. There's about almost 59% have said we've experienced at least a 30% drop off in a supply chain. I suspect had we gone higher, we just gave 30% as the highest value, that we would have seen more, probably would have seen some companies with a much higher percentage, but we just cut it off at 30%. So interestingly also, so we said, okay, so you have a problem with your supply chain. How long is it going to take you to reestablish your supply chain or get your stock back up to normal levels? And we can see that whilst most firms, just sort of the majority of firms said, okay, we have an idea when we will be able to restock, we can see that it's going to take a lot of firms over 2 to 3 months. So we can see already that there can be economic impact of COVID-19 for an extended period of time. This is not going to be a short-term impact. This could have a rolling impact. If firms who are working in the agro-input sector, so providing seeds, fertilizers, crop protection products, are having problems stocking now, this is going to impact into the bee season in Uganda, which will have continued economic impact throughout 2020 and into 2021. So we can see that there's a risk of a rolling impact here. So whilst there's been a lot of negative things about COVID, and I think our panelists are going to touch on a little bit of the negative things, but they're going to talk about some of the positives as well. The COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown in Uganda has spurred innovation within businesses, and we can see that businesses have adapted very quickly and very rapidly, and we can see now a lot of firms have started taking payments through mobile money, which they weren't doing previously. They've now identified specific distribution and collection partners. That means they've got partners who are responsible for sourcing raw materials, but also for distributing finished or finalized products for them, which is something that they maybe hadn't been doing before. Some have gone on to also set up online ordering systems, and we saw some more responses in the quality component of the survey, whereby businesses gave a lot more information on this. So they said, look, we've set up an online presence. We actually may have gone as far, some businesses were going as far as setting up toll-free telephone numbers for clients to call them on. Other businesses started advertising through SMS services or using other means of distribution. So whilst there has been a lot of negative things around COVID, there is definitely positives, and I think we will hear from the panelists later on some of the opportunities that they have seen to change and modify their business practice, and perhaps some of those are things that they would not have taken on as readily or as quickly without the lockdown. But they've been very flexible and very nimble in how they've responded, and I think there's some lessons that we can learn from everybody there. So I think I have one last slide. So I had mentioned that the embassy's main. I'd like to talk about the SNV Tide project. SNV also manages the CRAFT project, Wageningen CDI's Integrated Seed Sector Development Project, and also AVSI's Sky project, which focuses on youth skilling and has a lot of partners in the agricultural sector. I'd also like to take a moment to thank my colleague Robert Masaba, who was responsible for putting together all of the questionnaires online and then doing the data analysis. So without his work, we wouldn't have had the report today. So thank you, everybody, and I can't wait to hear the panelists and get some more information.
Excellent. Thanks, David. And I would like to mention, as David touched on at the very end, the CRAFT, AVSI, SNV, and ISSD-led projects. We do have at least one representative from each of those who we're going to hear from directly. So thanks, David, very much for that presentation. I hope some of you will use the chat or questions function in your control panel to ask a few questions if you have any for David or the other panelists as we go into the next phase of the webinar. So I'd like to introduce our first panelist, which also one thing, as everybody knows, I'm sure that many of you have attended more webinars in the past 2 months than you have probably in the past 2 years due to the COVID crisis and what it's doing to our communications. I would like to say that there's a lot of things that happen on the back end, and when it's happening all over the world, internationally, there's a lot that can go wrong. So I'm hoping all of our panelists are going to be able to connect today, but if not, we'll follow up with them later, maybe in some Q&A. So I would like to go ahead and move into the panelist discussion. So we're going to go, as I said, one by one and answer 3 kind of big questions. One, what are the challenges that each of the panelists faced through COVID-19 and are continuing to face? Touch on that, but really wanting the panelists to focus on how have Ugandan firms really led in business innovation during this time? How are they overcoming these issues and seeing the way forward? And then thirdly, and this is kind of the biggest question, but what are the key gaps remaining in the agricultural business sector that need help bridging? So each panelist will take a few minutes and answer those questions, and then we'll follow up with some Q&A. So the first panelist that I'd like to introduce is Philomena Nishangano, who's from Rubiawa Dairy Investments with the SNV Tide Project. And we had a little bit of trouble connecting this morning, but I'm going to see if we can get Philomena available. So Philomena, are you online with us today? Okay, I believe we might have had some technical difficulties there. We'll come back and see if Philomena is available. So we'll move right on to the next panelist. We have Tobias Basson with Hygro Agri Ltd. This is part of the REACH-Uganda project led by IFDC. So Tobias, let's see, we're going to unmute you. That would be a good start. And we'll see if we can get Tobias's webcam on really quick. Excellent.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Tobias. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Excellent. So we can just jump right in. These 3 questions. If you could introduce yourself a little bit and then answer those questions for us, that would be excellent.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andy, and good afternoon, morning, evening. I'm not sure all the fellow panelists. I'm currently in South Africa. As you know, we also have the business up in Uganda, where we primarily farm Irish potatoes, either for the seed supply for the local farmers or for the local marketing, and we also do export vegetables. Our biggest challenge that we endured during the past COVID-19 pandemic, I would say, is in the line of, there's many things, but the main thing I would say was the logistical chain and also the cost of transport, especially for exporting. And there was many things attached to that. So if you first we had trouble for getting enough orders because the planes were fully booked. There was no commercial or passenger airlines going. So the pressure was much more on the freight carriers that was available. So the space was limited. Even the price went up. It also had an effect on us moving our stuff in the country, our produce, and yeah. And another thing I also want to mention is maybe is the change in eating habits in the consumers. I would say also in the during the past COVID-19. So in Uganda specifically, I would say that people mostly tend to because we are in primary food production, people tend to eat much more the local food, like the matoke that was available in abundance, I must say, because of the heavy rains that we have experienced at the moment in Uganda. So those 2, I would say, is our biggest challenges that we have endured. So the question is now, how do we mitigate these challenges now to a place where we can continue our business? So yeah, many of the things we as farmers, you know, we are in a planting program where we planted 3 or 4 months before to harvest today. So many of the process was already ongoing. So it was very difficult for us to just stop producing because the produce is already in the field and it must be marketed. So we then need to have like plan B and C and D what you can do with your product, either be selling locally or put it into another, looking for other outlets. But most of the cases, the best we can do wasn't as best as the first plan, of course. So what I'm going to say is I think that the biggest thing that one needs to then do to overcome this is to be very adaptable in your approach. And that is what we are always trying to do. Whenever we are tackling some new commodity line that we want to do, is that to make sure that you have like more than one offtake capability whenever you encounter any problem from your primary clients. But at least it must also be sustainable. You cannot give the stuff away for free. So that is what we did. So in short, to summarize, we have like a program of adaptability. The last question is about the agricultural gaps. Now, maybe I misunderstood the question because I saw the gaps as the opportunities. So not as what is still lacking. So we believe, because we're also situated in South Africa, there's a big reset in consumer preference worldwide. So what we see, because we're also exporting fruit, citrus to the most part of the world, is that we've seen, especially to Europe, the Europe retailers there's almost like between the 20 and 30% increase in the consume. In how many oranges they consume because of the thought about the vitamin C and also in the healthy vegetables, etc. Of course, like potatoes as well. So I would say that one needs to go and sit down and see, because it is almost like the whole humanity is coming and resetting back to what is really important. And people realize that my health is number one. And I think for the future going forward, that will be a major thing to challenge. So yeah, I also write down here that people value fresh produce in a new light. And yeah, and I'm excited for the place where we're at. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and yeah, I'm although it's not easy, we are still very positive on the, because we are in the right business at the right time. The world needs to eat, and we need to supply good food at a good value price. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Tobias. That's very good, very insightful. Thank you for sharing your experience. So we'll move on to the next panelist. And next up, let's see if I can get her pulled up here. We have Annette Kiza, who I'm going to unmute and ask to share a webcam. So let's see, Annette, can you hear me? Okay, here we go. Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Annette. If you could give a brief introduction and answer the questions just the same as Tobias, that'd be great. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's Kiza Annette. I work with East West Seed Company. It's a Dutch company, but Naseko is our distributor, as our main distributor, and we've been for the recent times, we've had some challenges here and there for seeds in our areas. In that, but they could not be able to access the seeds. The reason is that, as how my colleague has said, There's been something to do with transport system. In that we have we have input dealers in different areas. So delivering those seeds in those areas at that time, it was very, very difficult. Also, something which we observed, which was really, which has affected us, is the prices of the vegetables products that we're having. The prices have reduced, they reduced drastically because people were selling at any cost so that they can be able to buy whatever they can, maybe salt, in extent of salt. At the same time, there was no, because these vegetables are perishables. So at one moment, you would realize that they had no option apart from selling. Thing which also was coming up, which on the supply chain, we realized that the input dealers also could, however much they're saying they're essential in our areas, somehow they could not be able to. In some districts, they're finding difficulties learned out of that. What we did was set up social media outlets, like also WhatsApp. We started sharing more information on who can be able to go here, where can you have access to other information from other areas. You are able to get access of, we could be able to have our officers who are there. They could be able to move with one circle, with one pack.
Kiza, we're having some connection issues here. One moment. Seems like you went off. We're going to try to take the webcam off and see if that. Can you hear me okay? Kiza, are you still with us? Well, we might have, sorry everyone, we might have lost Kiza's connection. We'll see if she comes back. Some of the technical difficulties we encounter trying to.
Are you able to get me?
Hi, Kiza. Hey, yes, we can hear you. You can just talk and we'll leave the webcam off. There were some connection issues. Go ahead, please.
Sorry. Yeah, I will, because I don't have time. I can say I'm already, my time is up. What we've learned from this is that there is a need for meaningful collaboration and partnership to fill the existing gaps, in that we don't look at ourselves as the sole providers, and we shouldn't look at the strategies that we had. You have to adjust the programs, you have to adjust the strategies. What you set in the beginning it should be static. It cannot be static. We have to have a dynamic approach when we are supporting the farmers. Also, there is also, I said, meaningful partnership. There are so many calls for proposals here and there. How can we partner? Because most of our projects are winding up in August. So what next? What have you established yourselves at the exit? What is your exit strategy? So one of our exit strategies, we try to work with local farmers to empower the local farmers who have been there to support the fellow farmers, so that even if you're not there, they can be able to take it on. This has been somehow successful in some areas, whereby some of those key farmers who are really good, they've been able now to be incorporated into be input dealers. Somehow it's like the way you look at in health sector, the way you look at VHT in Uganda is the same way we are looking at them. They can have the first aid, the first approach from the farmers. So we look at them as that's something which I think we had not even anticipated, we had not planned, but is moving. And maybe lastly, but not least, is that can we have what we call as a buffer stock? What do we do by buffer stock? That means can we now, because it's COVID, how do you order early? How do you have you increase your communication between in the supply chain? Who is where and how can we be able to communicate effectively? The moment we have proper communication, I've realized that is something which has helped us to be somewhere. Maybe my time is up. Thank you.
That's okay. All right. Excellent, Kiza. I'm glad we could hear from you despite the technical difficulties. Thank you for sharing. So actually, we're going to move to your colleague now, to Elijah Mwasheyenyi. And Elijah, again, I apologize for butchering your name, but I'm going to unmute you. And Elijah is also with East. Oh, sorry. We had the video there for a second.
There. Yes, hello.
Okay, there you are. Good afternoon,
Yes,
Elijah.
thank you. I think basically my colleague has mentioned most of the challenges. My name is Elijah Mwasheyenyi. I'm the head of East-West Seed Knowledge Transfer here in Africa, concentrating mainly on resource mobilization, partnership building, and management support to country teams. In Africa, we are operating in Uganda, in Tanzania, and in Nigeria, and we look forward to expanding to other countries. My colleague has highlighted some of the challenges that we've faced as a company. I won't have to repeat those ones. But let me just say on the innovation of using social media, especially for our knowledge transfer work, this is something we started even before COVID. But what we have done now is actually to intensify that in the face of COVID, because of the limited access to farmers, limited access to farms. And the other thing also that has been affected is how we build our partnerships. With travel being limited or absent, and a lot of organizations that we are like prospective partners, sometimes closing shop, moving away, working from home like everybody else. There isn't that opportunity to sit down and discuss issues related to either proposals or partnerships. But we have been using a lot of the electronic media to communicate, whether it's Zoom meetings or through Google meetings and so forth. So we are intensifying that. Looking at innovation in future, we also see opportunities. I think one thing we are learning from COVID is we've got to be versatile. We cannot operate in the way we have been operating before. We need to realize that things have changed and we need to change. And so we need to be versatile. One of the things that we foresee for Uganda in future is a learning facility that we are piloting in Nigeria, which is called Funzi, which is a mobile phone learning facility. And with Funzi, you don't need a smartphone. It's actually an ordinary phone that you can actually get information on farming. So we are actually able to provide our advice to farmers as part of the knowledge transfer that we are doing through Funzi. Once that succeeds in Nigeria, we look forward to bringing it to a country like Uganda. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Elijah. Thanks for sharing. We're going to keep you on for some Q&A here in just a bit. Okay, so next up, the next panelist we have is Joseph Nkandu, and I'm going to ask to share your webcam, Joseph. We should be able to hear you, I think. Okay, hello, yeah. Joseph, how are you?
I'm okay, how are you?
Doing very well, thank you for being here.
Good, nice to meet all of you. Tobias, nice to see you. Yeah, my name is Joseph Nkando. I am the executive director of New Cafe. New Cafe is a farmer-owned and operated coffee organization. We operate across the entire value chain, all the way from the farm to the cup, and we do export coffee. So how COVID really affected us is in a way that where we are coming from an investment period into expanding our warehouses, into putting up new factories, a lot of investments that we have been involved in, skilling our workforce. And when COVID-19 happened, it happened at a time when we are supposed to be, making our repayments. And this has been so challenging in a period when you are supposed to do repayments, and yet looking at the demand side, that's where the problem started from. And when I talk about the demand side, is basically Europe, and more particularly, Italy and Italy, UK, then South Korea. Those are major countries where we export the bulk of our coffee. And yet we had upgraded in a way that where we are selling directly to the roasters, not intermediaries, and which roasters basically, sell to cafes. Now, all those cafes, hotels, restaurants had closed, and therefore, in terms of our orders, were affected, and therefore directly our business, in terms of cash flow, also was directly affected. Now it came to managing, staff. I had to reduce 90% of our staff, being the largest entrepreneurial employer in Uganda's coffee industry. So you cut off 90% of your staff, and not firing them, but working, from home. And therefore, much of what we had to do was to use Zoom in terms of our working. And then we had to intensify on our communication from time to time with our customers, but also with our suppliers. It was quite easy for us to continue in touch with our buyers in Europe and all the other places. But of course, in the country, it was easy to communicate to our staff, but not easy, in terms of mobilizing the coffee from the farmers. And at the start, it was difficult in a way that, putting up all these logistics together, it was not easy. At a time before we had got even car stickers, it was not possible for us to move. And we had now to deploy only our trucks. And some of us, even who had not had the opportunity to drive trucks, that was the time that, I had to drive, a truck. So it has been a challenge in terms of trying to also negotiate with our bankers to, requesting for deferment. And of course, the beauty is that with our established relationship with our bankers, so payment of loan principals we were able to achieve deferment of payment of principals. And then we had also to work on shifting our orders to the future. So those were the main areas where we had a lot of challenges in terms of managing our cash flow. We had to reduce, salaries by 40%. We had to reduce our advance payment to the farmers from 60% to 30%. So that's how we managed to continue and up to date navigating through the COVID period. Of course, as my colleagues have pointed out before, using Zoom, it helped us to keep in communication, also encouraging staff, encouraging our farmers through the various cooperatives to ensure that they keep on their farms also as farmers. Farms became safe havens because those are not places where COVID would affect them. So
Joseph, what do you see as the way forward? Sorry to interrupt. What do you see as the way forward from here?
Yeah, what I see as way forward is that we should expect uncertainties, to happen, and therefore it calls for agility. It calls for being adaptable. It calls for effective communication. It calls for cost minimization, but it also calls for innovating around financing, and this case, blended financing is an important aspect which we also, had to, we had to take time to look for more financing in different ways, whether in terms of loans, whether in terms of emergency financing, or whether in terms of grants. We had to keep in touch with that. And as far as these businesses are concerned, we have to look at this in the context of short, medium to long term, because these problems will keep recurring. And lastly, I want to say that what we have learned from this is that we need to really restore. Globally, there is need for restoration of what has gone wrong. We need regeneration of what has gone wrong. And we need really to have even more and more of social enterprises that has both sides, impact and profit, as important elements to have moving forward.
Excellent. All right, Joseph, thank you for those insights. So I'm sure there'll be some more questions come up, so we'll ask you to stay online for now. Thank you very much, Joseph. The next panelist that we have, there were also a couple of technical difficulties. Let's see if John Tusashiwe is available. John, can you chime in if you're online?
Online.
Okay, there we go. John, hey, how are you?
Yes, my name is John Tusashiwe, and I'm the CEO of Trafford, a company that offers climate smart agriculture services, that is in trainings, agri consultancy, agro input advisory and procurement, and more so into produce trading, concentrating on cereals, pulses, and oil crops. I will try to be specific, and maybe these challenges and suggestions I'm going to share with you maybe would be able to share with other companies, and maybe we see the way forward. I can able talk about the challenges faced by Trafford as a company, and maybe these would be able and can easily be relatively the same for other players in the same industry.
Yeah, sure, John. I would say mention some of the challenges, but I think really focus on the solutions and the way forward as well, if you please.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. As advised, maybe I will try to jump into the solutions and innovations that can easily be adapted, and maybe they can see us help the farmer to have production going on. But I will request maybe I can have 30 seconds. I can look on some of the negative effects that we have, that as a company we have been affected in terms of sales. We have been affected in terms of meeting the targets for farmers for this season, which of course will affect the overall turnover in terms of tonnage. We have been affected in terms of our meeting obligation to pay the loan, but of course we have to mitigate it. And overall, we have been able to look at the solutions, although the challenges are there. I can say that the future is still looks bright, as the company is now adopting new technologies such as online reporting on data, on sourcing inputs, providing service providers, trainings, and other services that can easily be offered to farmers. So although this challenge is there, we need to have flexibility in terms of engagement of farmers and all stakeholders, in terms of reaching out to new clients, market. So although it is here, but we need to make sure it does not affect us as a business, because business has to go on. I would try to look at the innovations that we have tried to adopt as a company. I will look at most important was flexibility in our implementation strategy. Through this, we managed to be robust in adjusting to the balanced and planned activities, as we were able to meet the targets, some of the targets we had for this season. Some of the innovations we had was like provision of masks to all farmers. We had around 1,250 farmers whom we have been able to provide the masks, as the guideline says, about control and prevention of COVID-19. Another one was provision of hand washing equipment. This included use of jerry cans mounted with taps, use of liquid soap mixed with disinfectants, and also ensuring that social distancing in all our trainings, such as TOT and CSA trainings, was at least maintained at 5. Another thing we are looking at is reprogramming all our field activities to only begin with essential activities to avoid missing the season planting dates, and making sure that farmers are ably engaged and may be able to reach the end of the season, which is coming in 2 or 3 months from now. We have also, because of transport and mobility from head office to field office, we have managed and sat as and discussed, and we thought of opening up a field office, which we have ably opened up, and it is really coordinating the field activities. It is coordinating farmers and also making sure that staff deliver the expectations. Another one was now using the online sourcing. This involves using of like use of Zoom meetings, use of Skype, use of Go webinar, like what we are doing now, to discuss and make sure that all partners are engaged. I will try to look at the last one. What would be the gaps that would be remaining in agriculture? One would be, of course, we have to look at agricultural policy advocacy. We have to sit with the government, maybe we have discussions, we see what would be the best solutions for this, as in regard to this COVID-19. What do farmers want? What do companies want? And maybe we sit with the government authorities to come up with a policy that can be implemented to see that agriculture is not affected. I would like to end here saying that the most important aspect is we need to actively engage more beneficiaries and make sure that farming is not affected, as they have to eat and feed the world. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, John. I'd like you to stay on for the question and answer section. Thank you very much for your insights there. Next, I'm going to invite the panelist Kenneth Kagame, who I believe is online. Let's see if I can unmute Kenneth here. Kenneth, are you with us? Okay, good afternoon, Kenneth. Can you hear me? Let's see, Kenneth, you might be muted. I can't see if you can unmute your microphone. It says you're unmuted, but we still can't hear you. No, not sure we can hear you right now. It says everything's connected from what I can tell. Maybe try unplugging unplugging your headphones to see if maybe the microphone on there is. I'm not sure. Okay, Kenneth, let's come back to you. If you can look at your audio while we move to a new panelist, we'll come back and check in. Sorry about this. It says it's all connected. Okay, let's see. While Kenneth is working on that, let's see if we can hear from Dr. Godfrey Okoth Ochola, who is online, I believe. Let's see.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hello. Fine, how are you?
Doing very well. Let's see if we can get your webcam. There you are. Okay, we can see you. Welcome.
Yes. Good afternoon, panelists and Andy. My name is Okoth Ochola Godfrey. I'm a veterinarian by profession. I'm the CEO of Asima Agri-Concern Limited. Asima basically is an agricultural company that specializes in the poultry value chain. We specifically deal with the poultry feeds, day-old chicks of the three breeds, broiler, layer, and rainbow. We also do some training, and we do vet pharmaceuticals. Of course, just to be precise, I think most of our partners have been able to bring out these issues. But let me just highlight a few things here. The challenges that we encountered as a company. Asima had issues to do with accessing our clients. We couldn't access our clients. We were not able to deliver the volumes that we normally do. We were not able to even market some of the products because most of our farmers were cut off. They could not travel. They could not pick their pharmaceuticals, and they could not pick the feeds. So we had a big setback, and we believe that a number of jobs were affected because we lost about we let go some of our employees, about 20%. We have also had difficulties in paying our loans because we've got cash flow issues, and we had a shortfall in the volume of trade, basically. So this affected many of our distribution channels. We could not distribute these products in the normal channels that we use every day. So how did we go about this? The first thing we did was that we looked at the markets because we were depending entirely on the markets in the cities. Now we looked to the peri-urban and urban setting, and we diverted more than 70% of our products to go to the peri-urban and the rural market. And this worked for us because we were able to push those volumes in those markets. And it has given us an opportunity to look at these markets in the future because we now have a demand which we cannot satisfy, where we can push more than 2,000 to 3,000 trays of eggs in 6 days. We've also had challenges with the prices. The prices of some of these commodities went too low that they could not revolve back the money to enable us to purchase the raw materials. But as I say, this mitigation was done and it worked well for us. We also introduced a mobile money platform for people making orders, making payments, and also making orders online using email and WhatsApp, processing their invoices and receipts and remitting them through these platforms. This enabled us to maintain small orders and keep our people with information about when they need to pick and when the deliveries will be made. We've also had to make deliveries to those clients who are in a radius of about 20, 30 kilometers. When they buy, we deliver, and then the payment is processed through the mobile money platform. As a company, we looked at how we diversify, not to stick only to the poultry value chain, but also to go back and trace our roots in the dairy and the beef, because being dependent on the one sector, when you get a blow, it can really push you very far. So that's one of the areas that we want to look at in the next 2 years. Of course, I must say the procurement of raw materials was severely affected because most of these people pick from up country. So the cost of transport was heightened. That it also affected the cost of the feeds that we make. So this in turn also affected the entire purchasing power of our customers who are already under lockdown. What are the gaps? If we look at the gaps of the sector, I must say we would propose that government would look at intervening in the post-harvest handling of storage and cereals for the feed raw materials, because it's quite challenging for most of us to engage and store enough cereals that can mitigate, that provide stability in the prices during off-season. This can be done through cooperatives. It can be done through farmer groups of sorts. We also look at the gap somewhere where it has to do with the interest rates. Farmers need lower interest rates, loans with the low interest rates, so that they can take it for a period, not short term, but maybe 5 years, 6 years, in that nature. Now, this can only be done through the development banks, where government has a strong influence. We also looked at the possibility of government to reduce on the bureaucracy of imports. The permits that we always get, the permits for importation, permits for exports, mainly through the Ministry of Agriculture and also the Uganda Revenue Authority. So we normally get challenges there that we would prefer some of these permits and it could easily be processed through the online facility. We also looked at the performance, assessing our employees on a more regular basis, basing on performance targets versus the output, because we realized that this time we need to be even more efficient in the way we work. We need to know what are the targets we are looking at and how the employees, that do we really need this number of staff for these tasks, and also basing on the cost accounting method, whether it is inevitable for us to have it. We've been able to renegotiate the repayment of our bank loans and requested our banks to defer these payments to later dates. I think these are the areas that were mostly looked at, and I hope this has been a good presentation for the benefit of the public. Thank you.
Great. Godfrey, thank you for sharing. I would like to say to everyone, all of our attendees, we still have 190 of you online, which is great. Thank you all for sticking with us. Just to take a quick moment to say that we are at the hour, the time limit that we set for this webinar. We're going to keep going because we do want to hear from a couple panelists, at least for the next 15 minutes or so. So if many of you need to go, of course, that's totally fine. This is being recorded and will be sent out to everyone who registered. So if you need to sign off now, please feel free to do so. We'll be sending out the recording afterwards, along with some of the questions that we've received from all of you. So I just wanted to mention that very quickly to all of our attendees. But I would like to take a few moments to circle back to a couple of panelists who we wanted to hear from, and then close out with the remaining. We've got about 3 or so left, I believe. So let's see. I wanted to circle back to the beginning with Philomena. I believe she rejoined, and we're going to see if we can hear from her now. Philomena, can you hear us?
Yes, yes, I'm Philomena. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can't see you. I don't know if you have a webcam enabled.
No.
Okay, that's okay. We can just hear from you. Thank you for being here, and I'm glad that we could hear from you. So if you could give a brief introduction of yourself and who you're with. As you've heard, probably there've been a lot of challenges covered. We would like to hear a bit about how you have implemented some great solutions or innovations, and how you see the way forward for the next few months or even the next year or so.
I said I work as an executive director, which is a dairy breeding. We specialize in dairy breeding. We also, in partnership with SNV, we train farmers. We have so far trained over 750 farmers, mainly in changing the mindset to look at farming as a profitable business rather than a cultural heritage or as a way of life. Now, our work involves grazing in paddocks with supplementary feeding with silage or fresh napier. Our area of expertise is breeding, of course, as I said, managing systems, both governance and at operational level, and record keeping. Can you still hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Are you hearing?
Oh.
Okay. Now, our biggest challenge during the COVID-19 was reduced income. As a result of not training, which we do twice a month, and hosting groups. So we had to look for ways of raising funds. First of all, to stock caricide and veterinary drugs that would keep us, we thought, for 3 months. And at the same time, continue making, we couldn't make silage. That was another challenge. We normally make silage during the month of April out of napier grass from our outgrowers. We were unable, but then we had to cull all the animals which are more than which have more than 4 calvings, and we had, fortunately, a very good market, and I thank God that we had that. So the funds we raised, we were able now to buy from our outgrowers napier grass and chop it and feed the cattle as supplementary on a daily basis. That helped us spread the resources rather than do silage, because making silage would mean having no more than 10 people, a group. We normally use about 40 people to make silage, and that would have meant a big gathering. But instead, we were chopping fresh napier to feed the cattle as supplementary feeding, and that helped us. Now, concerning the training with SNV, we've reviewed the curricula, and given that we've really changed the mindset of many farmers and farm workers, we reviewed it in light of what else can we do? What else can we train the farmers in? And we are addressing the entire dairy business chain and systems, which includes record keeping, biosecurity, disease prevention, fertility chain management, feeding, and pasture management. So we are looking at adding in more in our curricula for training in the future, or to give them more knowledge concerning doing dairy farming as a business. Now, as I said before, the
Philomena, it seems that you're breaking up.
Get to the farmers, but for those for whom we are able to contact, we are aligning a number of farmers do book. Can you hear me?
Yeah, the connection was going in and out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
But for the, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Meanwhile, we've tried very hard to instill in our employees the measure of prevention, hygiene, so that we can eliminate eventually the use of drugs, so that we are able, for example, not to have cows which are suffering from mastitis as it used to be before, and reduce on the East Coast fever. Because once we are more careful about management of the cattle and of the human being, we think we shall be able to place, and would want to hear even government to eventually help us to avoid, to prevent our cattle from falling sick, and vaccinate in time, or even eliminate some of the diseases that like foot and mouth, so that we don't have to spend on those. I think that is it. Other issues had been said before. I thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Philomena. We have one last panelist. I believe due to some technical difficulties, others have dropped off, but we have one last panelist who I hope is still with us. We have Taha Munir. Can you hear us?
Hi, Howard. Yeah, Andy, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, perfectly.
All right. So many of the points have been mentioned, but I'll start off with a brief intro. My name is Taha. I'm one of the directors at SWT Tanners Limited. We're a vertically integrated company, so we have a rice farm under development currently. We have a rice mill in Kampala, and then we have a distribution set up around the country. So one of the major problems that we faced, and similar to the others, was regarding our sales. With the current scenario, fresh produce has become very cheap, the perishables. So we are actually competing with not only other rice brands, but with other perishable goods, matoke, potatoes, and so on. Prices have generally dropped on an average of $75 per ton. So in the short term, to handle this challenge, we are having to save costs. So that has been, cutting out marketing cost, reduction of salaries, etc. But in the long run, what we do see is we need to have cheaper rice. So that means seeing how to have a leaner organization and focus on growing more locally to have a cheaper option in the market. So that is something which we also see as a positive in the long run, because we are entering farming now. So it means that we are in the right direction. One of our major challenges has been on the farm development side, which others haven't really covered. So we worked with IFDC on making an access road for our farm and the community. And that was completed on March 16th. So that was just before lockdown was put in place. That means that all our design team, irrigation team, who we had engaged and they're from abroad, they are not able to visit to assess the ground realities while we implement their plans. Similarly, labor, which was being got from the eastern region, but outside of Bulambuli, where our farm is located, they were not able to get to our site, and team of builders and so on, they were not able to access our sites. So we have, with support of such as like Andrew Bongomin, we are doing an intense training program, and we are hiring locally from Bulambuli as of now. Similarly, we have had to engage another local irrigation team to work hand in hand with our original design team who is in Pakistan. So they're doing that through videos, voice calls, and so on. It's an added cost, and it's not getting us the full results, but in the time being, we're having to proceed as however we can. We also see this is not a problem that is affecting us immediately, but it will in the coming month. So we deal in, we buy our paddy rice from a number of farmers, both in the east and the north of Uganda. We are now trying to cultivate ourselves as well. And we also import a number of tons for a number of varieties. So what we are now seeing regarding our suppliers, the local farmers in the north especially, many of them are now cultivating in a reduced acreage, or many of them have foregone this season altogether. That has been because rice being a lazy crop, many have a tendency of going on a vacation or holidays or returning home during the off seasons. So many were caught out of the country currently. So they have not cultivated. So to handle this challenge, what we're doing, and actually IFDC is supporting us, we're setting up our own stores for purchasing in the eastern region at our farm, and we are getting a team of agents to deal with the local farmers in that area to secure our requirement to be able to run production in our mill fully. Many of the points have been covered, so for the sake of time I won't repeat, but for what we have learned from this is that, yeah, we need to become more leaner. We need to save costs where we can, so we can have a cheaper rice in the market. Rice is often viewed as a luxury food, and our markets have primarily been hotels, schools, and it doesn't seem they will be opening anytime soon. So to make it more accessible for the local community, for the local Ugandan, we need to make it cheaper. And with farming, it seems we're going in the right direction, because cross-border trades, imports are becoming more difficult and becoming costlier. Hello.
Excellent. All right. No, we can hear you, Taha.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your insight. So we do have a few questions that have come in. So for sake of time, I'm going to kind of keep them a little general, and I'm only going to pick just a couple of questions, because we are already over time, and I know everybody all of our panelists have been very generous with their time, both before the webinar and during, and a lot of the attendees are holding out strong. So thank you very much for enduring and for being a part of this. So I would like to pick just 2 or 3 questions. There are 1 or 2 that are for some individual panelists, and then a couple of broad ones. So let me pull these up here. let's see. So there was one for Kiza Annette. Let's see. Kiza, I believe, is still online. So Kiza talked about with knowledge transfer about the VHT model of knowledge transfer to farmers. Kiza, this question is how has East West Seed incentivized farmers to transfer knowledge since everybody is busy with their schedules, and also incentivize farmers to transfer knowledge in light of COVID-19? You know, there's a lot of bigger concerns right now. How have you, and maybe other panelists would like to talk as well, how have you incentivized farmers to stay dedicated to knowledge transfer? Kiza? Well, let's see. It doesn't appear Kiza might.
Okay.
Oh, no, we can hear you now. Okay.
Are you able to get me?
Yeah, we
Okay,
can hear
fine.
you now.
Now,
Yeah.
as knowledge transfer, the VHT model, what did I mean by this? It's like we look at ourselves like any time from now the project is ending. It was part of our sustainability approach. The projects are coming to the end. We have worked with farmers. We worked with farmers for around 2 seasons. The next season, we need the farmer graduates. So that farmer who has graduated, he has picked some basic information. So the basic information is able now to transfer the same knowledge to other farmers. Also, on the same note, we realized that we move from one village to the other. So the same approach is going to be applied. The farmers is like, I will borrow the leaf from Xavier, my colleague. Seeing is believing. So whenever they see something which is beautiful, they're able to replicate. As we talk right now, if I can give an example, I will give just one of the projects, which is so amazing project in West Nile, in the refugee camp. I keep on talking about it because it's like these guys, they have a square, I mean, I think they have 50 by 50, 200, I mean, 25 square meters, just generally allocated for the demo. But what do? On that very 25 square meters, they're able to plant around 4 crops. So when they feel like they can be able to expand, the moment they see something is very beautiful, they're able now to collaborate with the host community, and they're able to expand. When you come to other the commercial farmers, we believe that the commercial farmers begin as smallholder farmers. So the moment a smallholder farmer is able to appreciate what is taking place, is able now to expand on his garden. Maybe my colleague Elijah can also add there.
Oh, Elijah, let me see. You're still muted. Let me unmute you very quickly. Yeah, please go ahead, Elijah.
Unmute, right. Basically, the knowledge transfer of East-West Seed is really a practical type of knowledge transfer. It's a hands-on. We call it evidence-based extension. Because this is epitomized by demonstrations in the farmer's field. So the farmer is actually able to compare what he or she has been doing with what can be done at a different level. And from what the farmer sees and what the neighbors see, because the neighbors are also part of the trading. Each one of our vegetable demonstrations actually reaches out about 30 neighboring farmers. They actually see what is happening. That change which they see in terms of in the yield or productivity, in terms of the profitability that they will get, that's enough incentive for them to go forward.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Elijah. I'm not sure if any of the other panelists want to chime in on knowledge transfer, but I thought there was one interesting question that came in. And some of you may need to unmute yourselves here, but there was a question that came in about research, about if any of you see that there are any challenges from COVID-19 that required research interventions and/or partnerships to resolve those issues. If any issues or if any innovations could be fueled by research, and any challenges overcome through research initiatives. Not all at once. Not sure if anybody.
For me, for me, I look at, there are so many changes which come in. Personally, I'm looking at COVID. It has provided us, apart from the negative part, look at the positive part. It is, it has made us think outside the box. You can even imagine right now, a small, like now we are having offices at home. At one moment, I thought we would not be able to work, but we're able to work, and we're able to do work at less cost. So look at the cost of operation. There is a way how we're going to reduce our cost of operation in the way, in the innovative approaches we're using online. And also, if you looked at, you're thinking outside the box, this is what we tried to do. This is, I thought my technical staff are supposed to reach every farmer, but realize the time they were wasting from one farmer to the other, it was too long. But now, because we have introduced the other systems, I think, I believe there is, those innovations, they need to be documented, and at the end of the day, replicated here and there. The good ones, we take them, and the bad ones, we can be able to see how we work through them.
Oh, hold on, Joseph. I see you're, let me see, you're muted here. Please go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, I want to believe that, going beyond, of course, including our innovations inclusive, but going beyond that, I think there is a need for continuous research of what has happened broadly as far as the COVID pandemic is concerned. One, in terms of the environmental impact, grounding, whether 90% of the aircrafts globally, what has that led to? Mm-hmm. Back in terms of the financial sector, what I talked about in terms of blended financing, I think this is still an area that may require, a lot of research in that, given the fact that where we are headed for, ever increasing uncertainties, volatility, ambiguity. I think it is important to have research which can come out concretely to suggest, which way the financial sector, can go in trying to mitigate with what financial instruments that may be needed in, times like this. I think that is something that is important. How about in terms of the social sector? What is happening? What are we seeing? What have we seen that has happened in the positive way or negative way, and that we can pick on much more of the positive to move forward? Really, research is needed.
Excellent. Thanks for that. So this is going to be the last question that we have time for. For all the attendees that are still here, we're going to export these questions and try to answer those over the next few days. And we'll send out a answer to a lot of these questions where we're going to try to work with some of the panelists to get some answers here. But I would like to ask one more question, and I think that this is pretty timely and relates to the finance side of things. And so maybe this is for everybody. This is not just for one particular person. But there's a question, and there were several questions similar to this, of how can we improve the easy access and affordable funds to smallholder farmers? This seems to be a major source of challenges that farmers face, but particularly right now. So what sort of interventions are needed to make sure that that funds are available to farmers, especially at the beginning of the cropping season, and in light of all in light of the pandemic, of course? Again, not all at once.
Andy, I'll come back. I think when you look at the farmers, it is now more critical, more than ever before, that the institutions organizations that bring together farmers have become more and more important. And therefore, in terms of whether channeling funding or any kind of support, it is, time like this one that it calls for more support towards, the systemic way of empowering farmers to become more and more organized, such that they can tap into opportunities related to financing.
I think
Excellent, Joseph. Yep.
I think tied along with what Joseph is actually saying, maybe any support that targets, finance for smallholder farmers have to be devolved to the grassroots level. What am I saying? For example, if you look at banks, the normal commercial banks, they don't normally give finance to smallholder farmers. And the institutions that are actually important for supporting the smallholder farmer, most of the time are actually the local savings clubs, where there are SACCOs or the village community banks in some areas. So that finance need to be devolved down to support the grassroots organizations that are closer to the farmer and that can avail that support to the farmer without the standard collateral, but with the collateral that is sort of community managed, so that smallholder farmers can actually access.
And in that kind of situation, you find that traceability becomes very, very important. And it is around the organization of farmers. It is around digitizing traceability that will enable, whether you come up with mobile money, transferred, to the farmers. That's where it becomes, functional, when farmers are organized within a value chain that is digitalized with the, traceability. And indeed, where we are headed, the markets will more than ever before call for more, digitized, traceability kind of system.
Tobias, I believe you were going to add on there as well.
Yes, thank you, Andy. I'm listening. I just want to repeat myself in saying that I think many of the ways that people are thinking is being reset. I think that is the one thing I want to say. So I always will put me in a place of what does a country like Uganda needs to do to position itself to become a role player in the global economy. Now so if I can just say some few things, I believe that one needs to take some. So I know that there's two different parts of doing agriculture. The one is enabling food security, and the other one is to get foreign capital and foreign capital through exports into the country. Both of them are equally important in my books. So what we are trying to do at our place is that, and I haven't talked about it because the time was a bit limited, we are trying to put up like an agricultural hub, and everything that a farmer will need. Now, hopefully, we are trying to put a blueprint now for something, and that we are trying to make open something that can be also duplicated in different sectors of the agriculture industry. So typically, this hub will have the commercial side to it, like we are commercial farmers in the country at the moment. And the biggest thing that is the engine of anything like this is the market. So if you're going to ask any market, whether it be a big commercial farmer or it's a smaller farmer, he will say he wants good access to a good market, paying good money for his good products. So I heard what's been said about traceability is very important in the international market. So all these kind of things like traceability, farmer training, financing, supplying of seed inputs, technical supply, even access to irrigation, to farming implements, all these kind of things we need to put together. So we are working with the University of Makerere at the moment, with the horticultural department in trying to see how we can do something like this. So we applied for funding at another source, grant funding actually, to see if it will be possible. But we believe, you know, first you need to put the vision in the farmers' hearts. They need to see what is possible, and I fully agree with these people of with Annette and Elijah. That seeing is believing, and you know, and once you created that, what is possible in farming, you don't need to tell people what to do; they will immediately buy into it. And we are now small, already facilitating these kind of things on our farm there where we are working, and we believe the model that we can roll out in the rest of the country. So, but the beginning of everything is you need to start with a model that will work, and that, therefore I say is that there's been a reset in the consumer appetite in different products at the moment available in the world. One needs to do a study into that, I would say. After that, you will need to see how you can model something that has, because people don't give money for things that are not going to work. To persuade the investor or a bank or anyone to put money into a business, you must persuade them that you have done your homework 100%. And whatever you do, whether it's exporting coffee or fresh produce or whatever you are trying to do, I think a good market studies and the place where you can work from to work down, so you can ensure that the farmer at the end of the day will have access to a good market that will pay him well for his product. And that is how you're going to start snowballing and growing the whole of the economy, in my opinion.
Great. Thank you, Tobias.
Yes.
So I think we are really at a kind of a, yes, who?
Andy?
Hello?
Andy? John speaking?
Yeah, hey, John, we will, if you could wrap up your comments in about 60 seconds or so, because we're over time and we need to give it back to Ano Galema to wrap up. So if you could just keep some very brief comments, that would be great.
Okay. I will still look at the financing part of it, where a farmer needs to be financed. Yes, it is a very important aspect where a farmer has to be financed. But are we first looking at reducing the risk where this funding will go? Are farmers already given enough capacity to handle this finance that might be given to them? Yes, we have scenarios here in northern Uganda where we have cooperatives, we have farmer groups that have access to finance, that have even tractors, but they are not using them because they don't have capacity, they are not trained in governance, they are not trained in financial literacy. So even if these farmers are provided with finance, but do they have the capacity really to put into use why this finance has been given to them? So I think what would be the best option would be to first give capacity to these farmers in terms of governance. Also, we look at taking them through financial management. Then we also try to reduce risk, climate risk. We look at insurance. We also look at providing maybe insurance services so that when finance is given, it is at a safer side and protected. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. So I would like to take a moment and give a very, very special thank you to all of our panelists who shared your insight. Thank you for being so generous with your time. So on behalf of IFDC, thank you very much for being here and for giving all your professional insight and sharing your experiences with us during this difficult time. I'd like to give it back to Ano Galema, who's just joined back on, who will offer some closing remarks. Ano, thank you for being here till the end and for wrapping us up. Oh, or can't hear you very well.
Yes, am I?
Okay, there we go. Good.
Okay. Thank you. I'm looking back to a very interesting debate that we have, and I would like to thank everybody for their rich experience. I think it's this kind of very real information coming from the farm, coming from the factory, coming from the board of a company that gives us insight of what's really going on that level and how we could and should respond to that. So thank you very much for that rich experiences. Clearly, COVID-19 has an impact. The extent of the impact will likely depend on how long the COVID-19 restrictions will be maintained. At least for now, clearly, there's the businesses has been reduced, sales have been going down, cash flow issues following from that, difficulties in maintaining distribution channels, contact with clients, payment systems. Financial institutions have more difficulty in loan management, are getting more risk adverse, have a different perception of risks now at the moment. And the access to certain services is also restricted. So my view is at the moment, a lot of companies are managing on a much lower level. Some of them hanging on with their teeth on their existence. Other ones have a little bit more reserve and they can keep it on going for a little bit longer time. From the stories, I also get interesting examples of how companies and private sector players are responding to it, either by all kind of practical measurements, which has to be with mobility, with hygiene, but also in the way they design their business process, their farming practices. On that level, I also hear a lot of innovations and new things going on. An interesting angle, I think, to the whole discussion are three things that I would like to share. One of them is the question: does a lot of these adaptations which are now ongoing, in terms of their relevance, do they go beyond the COVID-19 situation, and will they also be part of our normal way of working after the COVID-19 response is more or less more under control? My answer would be yes. I think there's a lot of innovations ongoing now, which will be very relevant also for the future. Maybe the COVID-19 has speeded up a little bit this kind of new innovations, but they will be part of the new reality, I believe. There was also one example saying that even on the demand side, I think Tobias said that consumers, they take now different products. They have different wishes when it comes to food products. That also could mean that in the future we have different kind of services. The second point is that in our response, the response from development partners, from governments, from financial institutions, to what extent do we have to do things differently when it comes to assisting the market? Markets clearly cannot cope with the COVID-19 impact completely by themselves. They need some kind of public support. But the question is, what kind of support do we need to give, and for how long? There have been mentioning of several things in terms of financing, giving some input support to private sector players, more use of blending financing, subsidizing interest rate, or more concessional financing for private sector players, taking up certain functionalities. There was the issue of storage was mentioned, or taking over part of the burden of companies or private sector players, for instance, when it comes to the expenses they have for innovations, digital platforms, things like that. We don't want to disturb the market too much, and at the same time we want to support the market players in this very specific circumstances, and that's a delicate balance. And I think that balance will come back the coming period also in the discussion. How are we going to design our support? A third point is that do we, following the COVID-19, do we also have to work in the future towards different kinds of food systems? The issue of resilience has clearly come at the front of our table. The issue of purely financial efficiency is not the only driving force for running our business. resilience might be even equally important and might even become more important in the future. So what does that mean for the way we do business? What does it mean for the kind of value change that we support? Also in Europe, there's quite some discussion of do we have to move away from global value chains and go more into national, domestic, or regional value chains? Maybe the issue of diversification at company level was also mentioned by one of the panel members. So I think on that level, we probably see the issue of being more resilient to this kind of external shocks. Today it was COVID-19. Maybe in 1 year or 2 years, it will be something else, whether related to climate or whether related to another pandemic. That will clearly also inform the decisions and the strategies that companies will have to follow the coming years. Problems are to a large extent generic, what I'm hearing. At the same time, every company is again specific, depending on the type of business they are in, the size, the stage of development, and that requires, of course, kind of tailor-made solution. And at the same time, when it comes to giving support to the sector, it's very difficult to be tailor-made. The measurements and support measurements are often generic, and that's what I see also in the Netherlands. There are always certain companies which are not helped by certain instruments while others are, and that's also part of the reality a little bit that we are living, and something that we probably have to take into account. And the issue of partnership in solving this kind of issues was also mentioned, and I would like to echo the importance of that as well. These are my short remarks on based on the discussion. I would like to thank everybody for their contribution. Very helpful, very interesting. And back to you, Andy, for doing the closure of the webinar. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Anno, for that succinct and very, very good wrap up. Really appreciate that. Again, thank you to all the panelists for offering your time and being here. Thank you for the attendees who stuck around, and I hope that this was informative and helped you in your endeavors, or at least was interesting to hear in whatever field that you're in. I hope that this is one of several IFDC webinars that we'll do in the future. And if you'd like to hear these things, like to hear more of these kind of webinars in the future, please let us know. So again, this has been recorded and it will be sent out shortly after the webinar, and we will be answering some more questions from the Q&A that we didn't get to. So thank you for sticking with us, and I believe that is all. So I hope you all have a great week. Stay healthy, stay safe, and all the best to you.
Thank you, Andy, for organizing it. Thank you, IFDC.
Thank
Very
you,
much.
Andy.
Thank you, Andy.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
You sent the Matthias,